there a writing craft book on your bedside table? Has it been there for a while?
Do you keep meaning to get past chapter 2, or chapter 1, or just the first page?
Then the Words to Write By podcast is for you. Hi, I'm Renee. I teach composition and creative writing to college students. My background is in poetry, but I'm working on my memoir.
And I'm Kim. I'm trained as a science journalist, but now I'm trying my hand at short fiction. Each week we'll be tackling a chapter of some well-known, but perhaps not so well-read, writing craft book.
Together, we'll uncover brilliant insights, face the hard truths, and totally disagree when the author is wrong.
This is our podcast, after all.
And then we're going to take what we learn and apply it to our own writing
by doing the book's suggested exercises.
We're inviting you to read along, or just tune in for the Cliff Notes version.
We're committed to improving our own craft, one writing advice book at a time, and we'd love for you to join us.
Welcome to another Words to Write By. If you have not done so already, you should head over to Patreon because there's some really cool stuff on there. We got some snark notes for each chapter. We've got activities for you to do, and me and Kim are ready to give you some feedback. So we'll tell you more later at the end of the podcast.
Hey Renee, how's it been going? What have you been writing?
Well, I had a very great experience this week. I had the opportunity to house sit and watch some cats. That was great for me because it was kind of a writer's retreat. It's really helpful for me to leave my house because I think this is true for everyone because the pandemic has turned our houses into like prisons or coffins or whatever. And so it's nice to leave my own desk and go to somebody else's desk. I took a class. So there was a 3-hour lecture.
Oh yeah, you took that class.
Yeah.
How was it?
It was great. It didn't have a ton of stuff. There was only 2 activities, but they were so good. It's one of the few I actually took and used on my own. So I spent a lot of time this week doing the 2 activities that the teacher gave. And it really is making a difference in giving me that elusive point I'm always searching for in my book. And it was great. I read it to my therapist. And she was very impressed.
She liked what you wrote?
Well, you know, it included a lot of the themes.
That's what you want to tell to your future agent or editor. And my therapist thought this was awesome.
Yes, she loved it very much. Anyway, it was a very good class. I spent a lot of time. I did whole outlines of my chapters, and I wrote.
Fantastic. I am glad that person went on a wonderful vacation and called you desperately to look after their house while they were gone. That's a good friend.
Desperately. Well, she left me a desk. Like, she set it all up, man. She had the desk. I ate her food, and she had these wonderful cats. Kim was such a great person. Thank you, Kim.
Thank you, Renee.
And how about you? You went on a little vacation because I was house sitting. So did you write any words while you were gone?
Actually, I'm going to talk about some words I wrote a little bit ago. We have decided to host a foreign exchange student this next year.
Oh, exciting. From where?
From Thailand.
Cool.
Before we were connected, we needed to write a welcome letter. And I just love writing these things. There's a certain balance between honesty and eagerness. I really like that balance spot, especially when it's just to another person or to a small group. Anyway, so I wrote a very nice welcome to our family letter.
Aww.
It was really good. It was funny. It touched base. It was a fantastic one. And we went to the form to put it in, and it informed us that there was a limit.
Uh-oh.
And the limit was 2,500 characters. So not word limit, but characters. And we went back to the one I'd written, and it was 4,068 characters. Boy. And they also included the spaces, too. So
that's evil.
I know. I cursed a little bit at that.
This reminds me of the last episode with Bradbury writing his screenplay and the director making him cut it in half. And then cut 30 more words, and then cut 30 more.
Mm-hmm. But this was pretty brutal. 2,500 characters is very, very little. My version was only 756 words, so we're not talking very long here. Usually, when I'm going back and cutting stuff, I'm very careful to like maintain as much of it as I can. But those are usually smaller cuts. This was a major cut. So it was like, okay, we're just going to be really specific here. We'll cut out all these nuances here and we will drop this little statement here. I was pretty rough on it. And I ended up getting it down to 444 words, 2,499 characters.
Ooh, wow. Do you feel it's good, or would you prefer to still have your old version back?
Oh, the old version was much better, but the other one did the job, so I'm happy.
Nice.
Okay.
In today's episode, we dive into the final chapter of Ray Bradbury's Zen in the Art of Writing, titled Zen in the Art of Writing. So what is Zen? With the help of the internet, we answer that question. Next, we move on to Ray Bradbury's 3 words of advice: work, relaxation, don't think. Okay, that was 4. And we try to figure out what he meant by those words and what those words mean to us. As a bonus, Renee lets us in on the not-so-secret way of getting an A in her creative writing class.
So,
We are at the end of our Ray Bradbury book.
I can't believe it. We've made it to the end.
I'm feeling a little bit nostalgic, but I am finding too that if a book is well written, usually it's got enough meat in it that by the end it's like they don't save all the good stuff till the very last chapter.
Right. He clearly saved this essay for the end.
Right. This is the eponymous essay.
Is that what they call it? Eponymous. What a word.
I'm going to feel really silly if I go back at the end of this episode and edit it and realize I did the wrong word.
Should I Google it now?
Nah, let's just...
Eponymous. I hope it's real. It sounds like hippopotamus.
So, Zen in the Art of Writing. Let's start with explaining what the title means, what Zen is, and why Ray Bradbury might have chosen to use it.
You know, it was interesting because there's been a lot of research on meditation. There's all these apps on meditation. And that's what I was thinking. When I thought Zen, I was like, Zen in the Art of Writing. Like, oh, this is going to be like a meditation on writing.
So I went looking on the internet. I found this definition of Zen that I really like. It's by Norman Fisher for an article for Lion's Roar Buddhist Wisdom website. Zen is a stripped-down, determined, uncompromising, cut-to-the-chase, meditation-based Buddhism that takes no interest in doctrinal refinements, scripture, or ritual. Zen is verified by personal experience. And then the Wikipedia is, Zen emphasizes rigorous self-restraint, meditation practice, insight into the nature of the mind and nature of things, and the personal expression of this insight into daily life, especially for the benefit of others. I don't think either of these really gets at what Bradbury was saying in this chapter, but then I also found this quote by Bradbury that says that he knew nothing of Zen until a few weeks ago when he wrote this essay.
So he didn't meditate on it long.
No, I think he says he'd been doing this technique that he describes in this essay for forever, and then he read this book called Zen in the Art of Archery. And it just clicked for him.
Interesting. So I do a little archery. I guess it's a popular thing now. I'm not very good at it, but I can kind of see, because you can't think of anything else, which is great for me. It's one of the few things, like, you can't think about what you're making for dinner or how awful an author you are when you have a bow and an arrow in your hand because you're staring at the,
The other coincidence I saw was that Ray Bradbury wrote this essay. It was published in 1973, and in 1974, Zen in the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance came out. I think this is one of the things where Bradbury had his finger on the pulse, and he just knew that there was going to be an explosion of these Zen-an books.
Interesting. So he did. He was like...
He knew the zeitgeist.
I can see him always having his finger on the pulse.
Yeah, I'm thinking that a lot of beatniks were into it. I think it was definitely rising undercurrent, and I'm guessing that Bradbury, with his various connections and his lifestyle now, was probably realized that this would be a key word.
And it worked out great because this book was published in the early 90s, and I know firsthand with a mother who thought she was psychic, was super into the new agey stuff. And the new agey thing really had a renaissance in the 90s. So he knew.
All right. Let's talk about what his idea of this chapter was.
So in this chapter, he talks about 3 things: work, relaxation, and not thinking. Or what he just says is, don't think. I could just see him with a finger pointing at us. Don't think, you. He breaks down each one as somehow like the tenets of achieving Zen in writing or being an author. The first one is work.
I liked his comment that the United States is both a puritanical-based country that values work, and yet everybody hates doing it.
Yes. It's a virtue because it's something you have to suffer through.
Yes.
No virtue is virtuous without it. I don't know. I think we've all been there. I myself was a big proponent of working hard, nose to grindstone. And it actually didn't work out great for me in the end, but it did for a while. It got me through to my 20s, but it starts to weigh down on you after a while. But I don't think that's necessarily what he means, because he talks about what you are working towards.
Right. He says that the thing you don't want to be working towards is work to make money or work not to be bored.
Yes, it's the why you're working, not so much the sitting down and grinding. He says that it's not going to work, quote unquote, if a writer sits down to write with the goal in mind of fame and riches and glory. He says, you want fame and fortune, yes, but only as rewards for work well and truly done. Notoriety and a fat bank balance must come after everything else is finished and done. That means that they cannot even be considered while you are at the typewriter.
I'd like to make a plug for one of my favorite Terry Pratchett quotes, which is, what an artist really, really, really wants is to get paid.
Agree.
I think so. However, the idea that you're going to write to have incredible riches versus I want to write enough so I can make a living writing is a different thing we're talking about. We're talking about the newbie writer that we've all run into that says, I'm just going to make this book and it's going to be turned into a Netflix series and a movie and I got this actor to play that part and then...
Right. We've all workshopped those stories. It doesn't work out so well.
Now, honestly, as a writer, one of the things we really do well is have a good imagination. And so it's almost inevitable, I think, that when you're writing this story, that you're imagining what wonderful things are going to happen to that story and how many people are going to love it. Your brain works that way. So it's going to come up. But the idea is that's not the goal. And
Right.
Ray Bradbury had a really delightful goal of what the best thing that your writing could ever bring to you.
Yes, and it was that somebody comes up to you and says, I read your story and it's amazing.
And they're not related to you.
And they're not related to you. Well, here's another one that he didn't mention, is that if someone's running up to you, that means that the author is recognizable. And there's only so many authors that are recognizable.
Or you're at a convention behind a table
That's
and
true.
someone comes
Okay.
to you.
Oh.
Or someone leaves a really wonderful Amazon or Goodreads review about how much the book meant to them.
Right. There was another worker, though. He's got the one worker that writes for money or for fame. But then there's another one he talks about, which is one I'm most familiar with. Given that I have an MFA, is the one that wants to be published in the Kenyon Review. And they write very Kafka-esque. They try to be Nietzsche. They are overly intellectual. And they seek out publications that will essentially let them masturbate on the page. And yeah, I know exactly who and what that produces. And I'm not saying it's bad, necessarily.
Some of them win big awards.
Yeah, well, that's... So that gets me with awards.
They're looking for a different kind of fame. They're looking for the admiration of the powers on high to recognize them.
Yes, and then...
The other type wants the hoi polloi to recognize them and give them money.
Yes, but they also want to be the one to decide. I remember once I was in grad school and I think I was taking a class on teaching creative writing. Or, I don't know, maybe I was at a party. I don't remember. But I will never forget this person who said this. We were talking about teaching, and I go, I'm very hesitant to teach creative writing. I don't know if I'd ever want to teach it because I don't want to tell a writer that they're doing something wrong because that just might crush their soul. It's just not right. It feels mean. I don't want to criticize their work. I'm just so happy that they're writing at all. And she goes, oh, that's exactly why I want to teach. And I was like, ew, who are you? Who are you teaching? And what do you want people to think of you?
But you have taught creative writing.
I do teach creative writing.
Yes.
I did do it.
Was it okay in the end, or did you feel like the same way that you felt earlier?
I doubled down even on how much I don't like criticizing students for their creative work. I have a very specific approach I've actually never seen in a creative writing class, but one I conform to every time I teach it. I don't give grades. It's very Santa Cruz. I got my bachelor's from Santa Cruz. So what I do is I have a series of journals, and there's 3 journals. There's a process journal and a reading journal and a writing journal. And the writing journal is where they revise the prompted work that I have them do in class, and they post it. They get points. Is it any good? I don't care. I'm not actually reading it. They
don't tell.
Well, no, they know that. It's for them to hold themselves accountable. The next one is process. Each week I give them a different activity on trying something new in the writer's process. Like, oh, have you tried meditation? Have you tried, sitting on a bus and writing down everything you see and hear? I try to make it fun every week. And if it's inspired by a book I've read, I give the author's name. And then they try it out. And it's a free write. I said, you don't even have to have punctuation. I don't care. Just 500 words. And then the third journal is the reading journal, where I give them a reading assignment and they just respond to it in any way they want. Again, like 350 to 500 words. And I don't care if they have punctuation or not. And here's the thing. They get points if they do it. They get all of the points if they do it. If they do all the journals and they turn in all of their big assignments, every unit, there's a short story, then there's 3 poems or whatever. They don't have to be any good. If they turn it in, they get all the points. So if they do every single journal and they do every single assignment, the big assignments anyway, they get an A in the class. And one could argue they're going to get an easy A. Believe it or not, the grade distribution is pretty much identical to any other class I teach where there are grades involved. There's always the 2 people who get A's, just 2. There's always the 4 or 5 people that get B's. The rest are C's, and people still find a way to fail this class. So I don't know, but what it does is it frees me up for, hey, I'm not going to give you a grade on that short story, but it frees me up for, you're going to get all the points so I can say whatever I want about it. So I give them the most honest critique I can. It's very thorough, and I don't worry about hurting their feelings because their grade's not attached.
Right.
And that's how I deal with creative writing. Also, they don't have to do any of the work. If they decide they want to C in the class, I tell them this on the first day. Do you just want to C in this class? Do the big assignments and that's it. You don't have to do one journal. I've made it so that every big assignment adds up to a C in the class.
Okay, so with this idea of work that you're talking about, it actually, it falls right back. This wasn't intentional, but you're basically saying the same thing that Ray Bradbury says about the work. He specifically says, you have been working, haven't you? Do you have some sort of schedule for yourself starting as soon as you put down this article? What kind of schedule? Something like 1,000 or 2,000 words every day for the next 20 years? At the start, you might shoot for 1 short story a week, 52 stories a year. For 5 years, you will have to write and put away and burn a lot of material before you are comfortable in this medium. You might as well start now and get the necessary work done. For I believe that eventually quantity will make for quality. So you're giving the students the quantity with the hope that then becomes quality. So in your own writing, do you feel this is the case?
That the more I do, the better I get? Yes. The amount of work I've done, even just starting my memoir, out of all the years I've done it, I am a much better writer now than I was then because I'm just putting pen to paper and it's the act of sitting down and doing it. But you have to be willing to burn things, in my opinion.
It's kind of basic knowledge. You have to keep practicing and you'll get better. It's nothing new there. But I think the hack that we do is we think we're practicing. We think we're writing, but if you actually look back at the time spent, it's not enough. And that's why Ray Bradbury says, well, you should start simple with just, one short story a week.
Right. Just a whole short story a week. That's all you need. I don't know, Kim. What do you think? You write like that too.
Yeah, I write like that. My writing program was incredibly intense. They had us writing all the time. A lot of that stuff didn't necessarily feel great at the time, especially. But when we all recovered from the trauma of that year, we all came out as amazingly solid news and feature writers. It was an external force that made us do it, but that's the reason why they hit us so hard for a year. Also, because if they stayed longer than a year, we would have all broken apart.
Wow. Did you carry the discipline over? Are you able to just sit there and knock it out?
Yeah, you have good days and bad days, but I think it's cumulative. I think writing a certain amount every day just builds. Right now, I'm trying to get myself to get out of bed every morning before the kids get up and just start a shut up and write session at 6:45. Trying to commit to that means I'm going to write something for the day, and I start off the day writing.
I know that one, and they're a really good group. You turned me on to that group.
They're an excellent group. And I'm not the only person in California that does it, but I definitely say that we look the scruffiest of all.
Do we?
Well, at 6:45 in the morning, as opposed to people in North Carolina that have been up for 2 or 3 hours.
Oh, yeah, I guess that's right. When they're in another part of the country, it starts at what? 9?
Yeah.
Lucky bombs. Oh, man. Oh, I envy them.
Another quote I wanted to do for here, back to this work thing, was one that my husband got for his arts degree. And the teacher said, an amateur practices until they get it right. The professional practices until they don't get it wrong.
Ooh.
That's the other part of this work thing. You just have to continually come at it, and eventually you won't get it wrong anymore. And then we can take this to the other 2 words he had.
Yes, we could take the next 2 pieces of advice, right?
Right.
One was relaxation, and the other was don't think. So now we're on relaxation. He talks less about this one. He really hammered the work home.
I think the idea is if you did the work part, the other 2 would just follow.
Yeah. Tenseness results from not knowing or giving up trying to know. Work, giving us experience, results in new confidence and eventually in relaxation. Suddenly, a natural rhythm is achieved, and then the body thinks for itself. So the work, after you put in enough of it, I guess your brain just takes over and you can relax.
When you stop making mistakes writing, then it's not hard anymore.
Mistakes. I don't know if that's a fair thing. You're always going to be, what's a mistake in writing? I guess common errors, right? Gardner mentions a lot of those.
Yeah, no, I'm actually talking about mistakes in, like, sometimes do you ever have problems just writing the sentence down? Like, that your protagonist needs to open the door and go into the room and see the room.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, well, do I describe them opening the door, or do I say they take out the key and then they're in the room? And then when they're observing the room, well, what will they see first? Do I take it from where they're standing and look out? Should there be an event that happens and then they should flash back? All these things get layered in, and I end up basically holding my pen going, what do I write down next? So that kind of mistake is what I'm thinking.
I see. Like, are you making the right choice about how you're describing this thing?
Uh-huh.
Yes. I don't usually do that with description so much, but I overthink things and prevent myself from writing because my thoughts are like, you're doing it wrong. No one's going to like it that way. Blah, blah, blah. But that has less to do with actually making any mistakes. It has more to do with just like negative self-talk and preemptively saying that you're doing something wrong. I don't know. The professional probably has figured out a way to turn that voice off, but not necessarily. Hemingway drank himself.
That's the way of turning it off, right?
That's how he turned it off, yes. I don't know. Sometimes I find myself relaxing into the work after I've written a draft or 2, and then it just hits me and you hit what the entrepreneurs now call flow.
Flow, yes.
Flow.
I think he actually uses the word flow in here too, but he's stuck with Zen as opposed to flow.
Yeah, what he says, what are we trying to uncover in this flow? The one person irreplaceable to the world of which there is no duplicate. You. Thank you, Bradbury. I feel good now. Do you ever relax into your work?
Yeah, I think my best work has come out when I relaxed, when I haven't gotten so hung up about where the words go and how to do the sentences, and dialogue and stuff just comes better. And if I can reach flow on that first draft, I can go back and fix any of the little errors. But there's the whole idea of the editing brain and the creative writing brain, and deciding, where to put the description or how to construct the sentence. That's the editing brain, and that screws me up.
Well, how do you get there, Kim? Is it the quantity of work you've done that allows you to relax, or?
Well, one thing I found is that writing on paper allows me to relax a lot more than typing. And writing in ink, so if I don't like something, I cross it out versus delete, is crucial, because even if I write a ton of crap and cross it out, I've still gone to the bottom of the page. Whereas if you're doing it on a word processor and you delete, you could have been working for hours and have 3 words.
That's true. I actually do write by hand as well. And I would agree. I never thought of it that way. I like that though. I'm going to think, hey, look at this full page. Mm-hmm. It might be all crap, but I have a full page.
Exactly.
He doesn't go much into how one relaxes. And I was a bit disappointed because I really want to learn how to relax more.
Well, I think his idea is you just write all the time and it gets comfortable. And that's the aspect of where actually it does follow back to meditation. Because one of the key concepts they teach you in meditation is that you're not going to get it right. You're going to sit there and try to empty your brain, and you're going to be thinking about how you're emptying your brain, and then you're going to realize you're thinking, and then everything falls apart, and you have a bad day meditating. But that's okay, because you took yourself in and did the meditation. And it doesn't matter if you meditate properly as much as you do it. It doesn't matter if that short story is a good short story as long as you do it, because you're building the skills. You become more comfortable, it becomes easier, and you relax.
Okay. I'm convinced.
I mean, that's part of running, isn't it?
Yes, but there's some negative self-talk that comes with that too. I think that might just be me. Like I have a very loud inner critic. The problem is my successes ruin me later. I've run 3 marathons. I am not in shape enough to run 3 marathons. Right now, I'm just trying to ramp up my miles. And the older I get, as other runners listening to this podcast will attest, it gets harder and harder each year. So then I start thinking I'm running and I might be a little tired. And I'm thinking, God, I've only done 5 miles. I used to run blah, 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 blah. And it's like, you can't demand that upon yourself. But it's not that the thought isn't there. And then you feel a little dejected. So I have little tricks to shut my mind up. But unfortunately, I have a lot of them because it's very hard to turn that off.
But when you're using those tricks to get through, and even if you only do a 5-mile run, and you come out the next day, do you feel better or worse for having only done a 5-mile run the previous day?
I feel good. I said, I went out there and I did it. And, if I worry about being in shape, it's like I may not be in great shape now, but I did the work. And I know if I do it enough and trust in that process, that it will work out in the end.
Right. I actually like this better than the whole idea of building a habit, because I always fall off my habits. The idea that you're just going to write what you can this day, and that's what you're going to do. And
at least you showed up.
And you'll keep going it for as long as you can. If you fall off, well, then you'll start again.
Bradbury even says something about this. He says, to fail is to give up, but you are in the midst of a moving process. Nothing fails then. All goes on. Work is done. If good, you learn from it. If bad, you learn even more. Work done and behind you is a lesson to be studied. There is no failure unless one stops.
I think this kind of advice is both the best and the worst to be given. It's the best because it says, there's no one special trick. There's no thing that you need to do that you can't do or that feels insurmountable. It's just you put the time in each day, you write, and you keep doing it, and you're going to get better, and good things are going to happen. It's also difficult because it is so accessible that we can only blame ourselves and our laziness for not doing it.
That is kind of true. A lot of people, they don't get around to sitting down to begin with. But at the same time, it is not practical. It is easy after you've had 50 years of a career and you've been successful to say this. But what about someone who's been writing for 50 years, has yet to be published, they've kept trying? Are they going to give this advice?
I think that if someone basically employed Ray Bradbury's technique and they couldn't get themselves published anywhere, then the problem isn't in the production, but in the following through. So you have outside artists where they come into the person's house after they've died and discover 50,000 pages worth of something they wrote.
Good old Aunt Bertha.
And some university PhD student says, yes, this is what I'm going to do. There's stories about stuff like that. But that individual, the fault they run into at that point is that they don't seek a larger group of people to tell about their story. If someone put that amount of effort in and had a network of people to get those stories out, eventually something would get published.
Yes. Eventually you will find a publication for it. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean it'll be like a big house publishing. Maybe it'll be a small magazine.
Right. But they'd have something to their name.
True. But it is worth noting, and this is something that we mention a lot in creative writing classes, is we don't write in a vacuum. And this advice kind of tells us to write in a vacuum because it does not mention the importance of outsiders and outside advice. It just says to show up. But showing up without any kind of instruction, as Gardner would say, you can't replace being taken by the hand and given the main points of Shakespeare's play or whatever. That's worth a lot. So I also find fault in this because it almost is asking us to write in a vacuum, is to write without a community. And if you just show up, if you work hard, it'll just, you'll make it in life. That's not how it works.
Right, but the majority of humans out there tend to reach out to other people when they're writing. I think it takes...
You'd be surprised. I don't necessarily think that's true. People write for themselves sometimes, and they write and write and write, and then they submit it to publishers or agents, and that's what they call the slush pile. And some people don't share their work. They don't understand that you need to workshop. I guess since I teach a lot of students, I would consider the public, or at least actual young writers, they're like 18 years old. The amount of what they don't know, things that are basic to us, is huge. And we used to be there. We've just forgotten.
Right. An 18-year-old has an amazing amount of time. Maybe not an 18-year-old, but definitely most 15 to 18-year-olds who have someone else that takes care of them still and probably don't necessarily have a job. I mean, there's a lot of time that somebody like that has to just sit down and only write and not tell anybody about it. But as you progress and go through various stages of your life, I would think that even that person that is writing alone and submitting and being in the slush pile, at a certain point, the fact that they're submitting, something would click for them. That they would tell one of their friends they would tell somebody else, and at some point, someone would give them a hand and they would...
True. Yes, you do it enough, you make your own luck.
Right. I think the people that write for the slush pile that maybe write for a year and a half and don't tell anybody and submit to the slush pile and get their stuff rejected probably stop writing at that point.
Okay. I mean, yes, if someone's going to be putting that much effort in, they're probably going to be telling somebody eventually. They will become some community.
At some point, yeah.
At some point, yes.
There is the internet after all.
Oh, Lordy. There it is. What was your first writing community? Like, what got you out of just writing for yourself?
The first person I opened up to actually was my husband on our first date. And we just started talking about like the stuff that I wrote and thought about. And yeah.
And then he read your short stories and then...
I think that it was the act of telling somebody, and then you ended up being around other creative people, and other people say, I have an idea for a story, or I was thinking about this, or...
Right, and then you just joined a community of writers.
And then there was the whole fan fiction community.
So you were part of the fan fiction community.
I still do some fan fiction. It's a really wonderful place to get feedback and positive responses and, see your stuff completed.
Yeah, and get readers.
Mm-hmm. And then there's the third area, don't think.
Which, He doesn't. No, he doesn't tell us much at all. The only thing I could really find about it in his essay, he says, I don't think after this long article, I have to show you here the relationship between archery and the writer's art. I have already warned against thinking on targets. And I'm like, okay, so what he is saying is don't think about the publication deal. Don't think about the money. Don't think about it. Like, you're thinking too much already. Just write, which again is kind of hollow advice.
The other thing he could be referring to is this section where he talks about all arts, big and small, are the elimination of waste motion in favor of the concise declaration. The surgeon knows how to go directly to the source of the trouble, how to avoid wasted time and complications. As you write, as you produce stuff, you just stop making certain mistakes. You realize that you don't need to give like 5 paragraphs of world generation at the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
You just don't make that mistake. You don't think about it. So that could be the other take.
So it's kind of like a natural progression then. You work and work and work so that you can relax.
Mm-hmm.
After you've relaxed enough, then you don't have to think anymore.
Right.
Okay. Give him a little bit more credit there. But he still didn't think too much, or he didn't say much about it. And that was the one I was the most interested in because I overthink everything. Dear listener, if you ever go to our Patreon and you read those snark notes, sometimes they're longer than the essays themselves. It's pretty awful. But I overthink. If you see the notes in my margins, talk about the art of overthinking. Anyway, I was very interested to know how to turn off my brain. But he didn't deliver for me.
He did not.
No, because he didn't have this problem.
Did you ever practice meditation?
Yeah. I think I need to get back into it. This book and our conversation is inspiring me to go back and meditate. And also, a book he mentions at the end of this essay, which I have seen mentioned before in other books, is Dorothea Brand's How to Become a Writer. And I downloaded it and listened to half of it already. And she even, and this is, God, when was that written? 1934. And she has a whole chapter on meditation. She doesn't say the word meditation, but it is definitely a description of meditation. I was kind of blown away. And I was like, whoa, this book is old. She even calls the thing morning pages. So I think that might be where
the term comes from.
I think that's where the term comes from, is her morning pages and meditation. It's amazing. So now I've got to get back into it. It's very hard for me to sit there. I mean, I guess listeners can probably guess and already decode me as this overthinker of somebody having a hard time.
Meditation isn't something you get. I mean, it's a process. It's not a do it right sort of thing.
Yeah. It's a following through though. And I'm kind of disappointed in myself because I sit there and it's very hard for me to not think. But I think that's the problem, is I need to practice not thinking as much. Anyway.
So that's your thing that you have an issue with. I think I'm very standard. It's the work part of it that is my thing I need to work on. I just need to get more hours writing. I need to get more stuff written. And I need to figure out a way to make it a priority every day.
Have you figured anything out yet?
I've got various things. That's just definitely waking up in the morning and starting my writing, I think, is a great start. And then we have that writer's retreat we're going to do this fall.
Yes. Have we decided on where we're going to go?
Not yet, but
yes, that'll be exciting. So you'll hear all about it, dear listener. We are designing our own writing retreat just for us.
Just for us.
And it'll be fun.
Okay, I think we have done good by Zen in the Art of Writing. So normally at this time, we come up with what we're going to do for our writing exercise. And we're going to give ourselves a pass this week because we have something else coming up next week.
Yes. So we are doing a workshop at the San Jose Women's Club where we're teaching people how to start their own podcast, since we have firsthand knowledge of this.
We need to work on what our outline is and run through our presentation. And it's going to be both online and in person. We're going to also have to hustle to make it as many people we can to show up, because it'd be kind of sad if we do it just to an empty room.
I've had some success so far on LinkedIn.
Awesome.
So yeah, people committed to going. Not to say that they will show up, but if you would like to show up, dear listener, please go to Eventbrite and look up San Jose Women's Club, and you will find our workshop.
It's on June 15th, 2022. So if you're somewhere in the future in 2023, it's already happened, but who knows what we'll be up to by that point.
Yeah, if it's successful, we'll do a sequel.
Thank you guys all for listening. If you want to support us, we have our Patreon page we talked about at the beginning, where we have Renee's snark notes, and often we'll have writing exercises. And also there'll be a link on the show notes page just to comment on this episode. You can do that regardless of whether you're a member of Patreon, or whether you're supporting us through Patreon or not. It's just open to the public.
And you can also support us by going to Apple Podcasts, where you can give us a review. Every one of those reviews really helps. And if you leave us a review, we'll do a shout out.
So you can give yourself a really interesting username if you want.
Yeah.
And also just passing this on to any friends that might be interested. We are going to do overview of Zen and the Art of Writing next podcast, and then we'll be announcing our new book as well.
Dun,
So
dun, dun.
That's a great one to recommend for a new person, because they can just you'll be able to get all our thoughts on Zen and in an overview, and then excited about what comes next.
Yeah, I mean, you know, if you don't want to hear us talking for like 9 episodes, you can just go straight to the summary and get the juicy bits. Juicy bits.
Thank you guys so much for writing. Have a great day.
Have a good day. Bye.
Words to Write By is produced by Renee Nelson and Kim Smiga-Adam. Our theme music is Roll Back the Carpet by Cool Cat Music. Have a great day.
Is it any good? I don't care. I'm not actually reading it.